Game Woven is now proudly part of the One Shot Network. Check out other great podcasts at oneshotpodcast.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Game Woven. It's time, the moment that we have been waiting for literally months. The conclusion of the Wandering Bridge arc. And as we enter the final leg of the Wandering Bridge arc, Winter from The Quiet Year by Avery Adler, I wanted to take a moment and summarize my own impressions from the story so far. This will be part recap, part musing on what has been a truly amazing series of set pieces wrapped up in perhaps the strangest pitch we've ever cooked up. The Odyssey of the Overton Bridge, blessed by the god of travel Zadkiel, is built on the foundation of 4 great lessons the people of the traveling bridge have learned and carried with them across the centuries. In Nairburn, the city that once protected the great sanctuary of the Velekalum, Overton learned a lesson in picking up the pieces and reconnecting with its neighbors after a great tragedy. They also learned that not everyone is on board with change, however promising. In Tarsig, nestled in the ever-steaming caldera of a barely dormant volcano, Overton learned the folly of exploitation, the futility of keeping magic away from the curious, and that no matter how grim things get, there will always be people ready to fight. In Dowlatheria, the lost city that houses the greatest weapon in all of recorded and unrecorded history, Overton learned that they are not immune to the temptation of tyranny, and were spared the terrible fate of grasping unlimited power. And now finally, as the Overton Bridge spans the length between the mesa and the mountain that make up the Twin Cradles, casting a long and hopeful shadow over what once was Velekalum, we ask the dramatic question: what will remain of Overton to learn the final lesson? In Before the Flood, we built the Twin Cradle Valley, the village of Velekalum, and the surrounding lands. It was a mysterious and whimsical place, some of which was maybe true, some of which was maybe legend. What we didn't do in Before the Flood, because that's not what you do in Before the Flood, is we didn't actually destroy the Twin Cradle Valley or the Velekalum or anything like that. You don't do that. You just end knowing that the place will be destroyed. But for this leg, the Overton Bridge will arrive after the flood. So Zadkiel, our creative coordinator who has guided the ship through this very, very complicated story arc, what happened?
I don't think it's within the spirit of the game to say at this point what happened. But when the bridge appears between the twins, from the mountain to the plateau, what the people of Overton see is a desolate place. As I'm looking at the map here, one of the first things that I thought of is the prism that's on top of this ziggurat or hill or whatever we had said it was. That is gone. It has been removed, and there is just the hill itself remains, but there is nothing on top of it except for a place where something once was. The enormous frog skeleton has been almost entirely excavated. There is still some scaffolding there and some signs that people did work to dig this thing out. However, those people are not there anymore. We're over the ruins of a town. And further south, besides the mountain, the only thing that dominates the skyline is an enormous tree. We're in winter, and so that tree, the leaves have fallen off. I think as we emerge, there are the last few red fading to brown leaves blowing off of this huge tree. And as they look down, it is surrounded by what looks almost like a twisted palisade of palisade walls of dead trees and branches and shrubs stacked up almost 10 feet high surrounding the tree, as the rest of the land, I think none of the other trees are particularly tall or particularly too old, but the area has become grown onto lush, but the foliage, the ground cover itself, is very, very dense. It is what happens when an area is clear-cut, burned, and then begins to regrow after it is absolutely devastated. Further out, I think the Black Canal is what it has been. From the vantage of the bridge, it looks like a scar, a void that cuts the little hollow where we find ourselves off from all points south, as the water flows through it and there's steam coming off of it. And points south don't have the same sort of dense, low foliage. It looks more like a regular forest further south, as it hasn't been laid low in the same way. But of course, the thing that remains, the one thing that appears to have not been touched by this, is the mountain. And I think as the bridge appears, a waterfall cascades over one of the gates, which is now pressed directly up. One of the gates at the edge of the bridge presses directly up against a hole into the side of the mountain that water flows over. It drenches the gatehouse and any of the buildings around and below on its way down. And as winter begins to set in, the water goes to a trickle. It becomes less as it begins to freeze again, and will start to dry up a little bit. And so we find a place that is newly grown. It is full of the evidence of previous occupation. It is devoid of any recognizable human society or life at this time.
That was stunningly grim, Zad. That was an outstanding description. Incredible work. Let's get started. I have drawn the first card. It is the 5 of Spades in Winter. And Emily, you are going to get the first prompt.
For everyone's first prompt, do we want to have them add a scarcity, and then one person randomly gets to be in abundance?
Yes, scarcities and abundances, and also how long is the gap going to be between the prompts?
I'm kind of feeling, what if we did this for just a season? Literally, it is just the winter that they spend here.
Plain is great.
Yeah, a couple of weeks per card.
Just the winter of their discontent.
Yeah, just like one really unpleasant winter.
Zad, just to make sure I understand, so because there were 2 wooded areas to the south, the Tree Keeper's Grove and the Wayward/Whistling Wood. In your head, is the big tree, is that the Tree Keeper's Grove tree, or is that a big tree in the Wayward Wood?
The explanation of what happened is the fairies took all of the other trees that were getting clear cut, and they moved them so that they could form an impassable and defensible barrier around the big tree. And that's all that's left of the old growth. And then everything else is this new growth that's come in, and it is functionally like it's verdant, but it's like brambles and nettles and various kinds of creeping vines that make it extremely difficult to walk in that area. Like, you have to be clear cutting every little bit.
So how about this? Enough time has elapsed since our most recent run and this one that let's update our scarcities and abundances. By the book, it says that we name each an important resource for the community and then declare only one of them in abundance. Now, enough time has elapsed that I feel comfortable that we could just set ourselves to 3 scarcities and 3 abundances.
Yeah,
Does that sound about right?
Love it.
Sounds good.
So we'll just kind of go alternating. Emily, if you would do a scarcity.
At this point, we've been through deserts pretty regularly, so probably constantly going through them. Probably not prepared for colder weather, so we have a scarcity of like warm clothing and cold weather gear.
Okay. Scarcity of warm clothing and cold weather stuff. Lex, would you give us an abundance?
Hey, you know what? I'm doing this one for Emily. We have an abundance of joy, I think. Things are going great
Aw.
right now.
Oh no!
Morale is up.
Nice. Love to see it.
I am going to do a scarcity. I am going to say that the bridge is cut off. The bridge is too far from any of its established allies to make mirror connections. So the bridge has a scarcity of allies. Zad, can I get an abundance?
We have an abundance of resolve. The bridge has been through everything and come out stronger almost every other time. It always comes out the other side, even when things are grim, even when they make mistakes and at times leave places worse than when they found them. This is a people that is determined to carry on.
Very good. Rob, a scarcity.
I think I'm going to say that trust in leadership. So I feel as though the events of the Rune of Dalatheria, like the structure is gone pretty almost similar to like the sheaf system, right? Like pretty like council, like lots of voices coming together. Like what this is the foundations of what we know will become the council. But I think that it's not been long enough for people to forget like how bad it got when like with leadership and tyrants and totalitarianism and all those bad things. So I feel like just people are just wary about who's making the decisions.
And breathe an abundance.
Community. We may not always trust the people at the top and the decisions they're making, but I sure as hell trust all the people next to me, the people that I have been surviving and gone through hell with time and time again.
Okay. All right. There are scarcities and abundances. We have a scarcity of warm weather clothing. We have an abundance of joy, scarcity of allies, abundance of resolve, scarcity of, I guess, like hierarchy or faith in hierarchy, and an abundance of community. Let us go then to the first prompt. Emily, I got the 5 of spades under winter. Oh, this is going to suck. Winter elements destroy a food source. If this was your only food source, add a scarcity. So that's just right out the gate.
Well, we have the primary way of growing food, which we have the gardens and greenhouses that have been built up around the center fountain. And while they have been through probably a number of climates, we already know they weren't ready for sudden winter. We're pretty far north. It's probably really cold. So when you have, just things growing out in the open, they're gonna get killed by the frost. So we lost a lot of our crops, our non-winter crops, probably just died off basically overnight.
So we're going to add a scarcity of crops.
Yeah, of fresh crops. Like some of the root vegetables would have survived, potatoes, cabbages, carrots, and the like, some onions, but a lot of the more temperate crops, any fruit would have probably just died.
A thing that also occurred to me in the places we've been, even when we've been like highly elevated, it's been in either like warm or temperate places. Like we're like halfway up a mountain, all the way up on top of a plateau. So we're
True.
not like in a place that is getting sunshine. Like this is like high winds, high elevation, nothing to stop the winter winds and like snow falling off the mountain.
Absolutely nothing that gave them a heads up to, winterize, you're going somewhere cold. So it was very much, we are unprepared for where we are now, and some things are going to be lost.
And I think this is a really appropriate first poll, too, because, like, within 2 weeks, all of a sudden, everyone's freezing and miserable, and, like, so much of their food is just destroyed.
I actually have a quick question for Zad, because before the flood, we saw that there were, like, herds of creatures living on top of the mesa. Are they still there? Or is the mesa empty?
I think like somebody goes out and they just start finding skeletons of
Like an elephant graveyard, kind of like.
yeah, a lot of these like two-headed. We're gonna go with like yak-sized goats. Is what we're gonna say those were. Just these big
Sure.
two-headed goats, and all that's left of the bones.
Well, the goats specifically wouldn't be two-headed, because one of the things we got last time was one of them was born with 2 heads.
I think they're getting at is that the two-headed one survived so well that the trait kept reproducing.
You know what? Sure.
Yes, sure. Over the next couple hundred years, they just all wound up, or most of them ended up with 2 heads.
Isn't nature beautiful?
Isn't nature beautiful?
This flies in the face of science.
I'm sure hexology is fine with it. That's our science.
Not on my Darwinist Minecraft server, thank you very much. All right, Emily. Start a project, host a discussion, or discover something new.
I think at this point, start a project so we can get our food situation figured out.
What is the project?
An exploration of the surrounding area to see just what is continuing to grow at this point of year. Like finding anything that's edible, anything usable, anything that they can use to... We want to winterize the bridge. We want to continue to survive here because we know we're stuck here. We don't know when this bridge is going to leave. So we have to be ready to be in it for the long haul and just preparing with the area.
Okay, are we exploring or are we winterizing?
Start with exploration because I wanna.
So the time period for these is roughly a couple of weeks, maybe 10 to 14 days each pull.
Yeah, it's a decent size area, but we've got quite a few people on the bridge at this point, and it's not, a huge space. So I'd say we could do a pretty thorough job in just like 2 weeks, just one turn.
1 turn. We start a project die for 1 turn. All right. Lex.
Hello.
Hello. In preparation for the coming year, the community begins a huge undertaking. Start a project that will take at least 5 turns to complete.
This might play well with what I was thinking of doing for discovering something new. Would you care if I did that first?
Would you like to discover something new and then do the prompt?
Perhaps, yes. That might... Because I had an idea, and then this plays really well with that, so I might do that.
I think we have to go with our gut here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Avery will forgive us. Probably.
Probably.
As long as you tell a good story.
Maybe we'll ask someday.
Send your complaints at ttbenjamin.
And send your compliments to everyone else.
Exactly.
So, if we're doing the discover something new first, I think what they all see is what they all see. What am I saying? I'm talking like I'm DMing right now. What you all see with your perception check.
1d6 plus 1 goblins. One of them has a plus 1 short sword.
Uh-huh.
Well, we saw one goblin. Did you
cat,
give
yeah.
him a short sword?
He has claws. He has natural weapons. So do 1d6 plus strength damage. So, a stranger approaches the bridge, fully prepared for the winter, looking as if they've been traveling for weeks. They come directly to the bridge, come to the gate, asking for shelter, and say, "Friends, those who travel with the Bridge of Zalo, your time to come home approaches. I've been entrusted with a message from a friend. In a few months' time, you will be called home, and it will be time for war. There are monsters to be felled. You know what you must do." So, the project that they're going to do that takes 5 turns is going to be preparing for war.
Prepare for war! Outstanding.
Mm.
Emily, your project die completes. How did the exploration go? Tell us.
Well, as far as finding immediately usable supplies, not too promising. This place was pretty thoroughly destroyed. There was contemplation about taking felled trees that they found, but decided against because it seemed like it would be a bad omen to take these trees from around this large tree that, according to some Verdreen on the bridge, seems to have some history of magical properties and power. But they certainly found the catacombs behind the waterfalls, discovered a strange hole in the steps, likely took bones from the plateau to use as building supplies. And because who doesn't want twin skulls decorating their walls, let's be real. But amongst the brambles and undergrowth of the hopefully someday new forest, they discovered not the best of supplies, but enough that they could use as food and not starve, to supplement what they have. There's the nettles, and many know how to prepare these to make them more palatable and nicer. There were strange mushrooms that they'd never seen before, but were assured by the experts on that they have traveling with them, if they could indeed be trusted as experts in this case, that they would be quite edible and rather tasty.
Are the fairies the mushrooms, or the fairies, like, I don't know.
No, fairies are mushrooms. We decided this. Fairies are
Okay,
fun.
well, fairies are a fungus.
The mushrooms themselves would be more of the apparatus for continuing to reproduce and spread. Like,
So that's a fairy nest. That's a
Well, my question
Kind
is, a cow beef? No, beef is the meat of a cow.
well, that's only in English actually. In every other language, beef is just called cow.
Fair.
but to get the beef from the cow tends to have to die. I'm gonna say that the
Yeah.
fairies don't. If you, it depends on the time of year. It depends on the time of, on the time of the season. For
This isn't killing fairies. This is preventing the birth of fairies. Totally different.
Or is it becoming a living incubator for fairies?
We'll
Oh,
find
no!
out. We'll find out. Who knows? We'll find out. All I know is there are mushrooms still growing there, and I'm like, yeah.
They're tasty.
I will say, I think because of our abundances, I will only add 1 contempt for one person showing up and the city deciding, oh yeah, on this one person's word, we're gonna just start getting ready for war in the middle of winter. I think if we didn't
That's
have
fair.
these abundances, I would want to put more.
I don't have the stats to be that persuasive. Whoever this person was clearly does.
Have you tried though?
No.
I think,
Then you don't know. Maybe you do.
but yeah, I'm gonna put in one contempt because in almost any other scenario, I personally would be like, and who are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Also, can we focus on food, maybe?
I'm still hungry, bro.
Yeah, we got the
that's what
mushrooms.
the
It's all
exploration
good.
team was for. It's like, is there anything usable in this cold wasteland? Yeah,
Swords, probably. I don't know.
usually.
If you look around anywhere hard enough, you'll find a sword. I bet.
Hey, well, we only decided to look for 2 weeks this time just to make sure we could survive for a bit longer. That'll have to be a later thing.
I'm going to assume that due to the amount of like wood and such around here, they are not making swords. They're making spears.
Yeah.
Like they are arming with spears, spear, pike, bow and arrow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The swords they have are the swords that are already on the bridge.
Shit
Yeah.
that they picked up along the way.
Which are widely varied and deeply cursed in different ways.
They are definitely going full Pavis crossbowmen. They've
I
got
don't know
the-
what you just called me.
right. So they've got the giant shield that they wear on their back that is like a full body shield. And then they turn around, they fire the crossbow, and then they face away from the enemy. And while their shield is protecting them, they reload the crossbow. That's
Cool, I guess. Never heard of that one.
Oh,
I believe you.
It's called a Pavis.
that's sick as hell.
Yeah.
I like those
Okay.
shields.
Yeah. They just like plant a big tower shield.
Can I do that build in Elden Ring?
No, unfortunately. I
No.
don't think you can do that build in Elden Ring.
From that project diet, it sounds like we're keeping a scarcity in fresh crops, but we now have an abundance of like foraged food.
I wouldn't say an abundance,
Fair.
but we certainly
not
have
starving.
some. We're not starving, but we're not, making big old.
Yeah, the food
Foraging
isn't like
feasts.
enjoyable. It's
It can be made enjoyable. We didn't say we have a scarcity of seasonings.
fair, I guess.
We're gonna Sam Gamgee this shit.
We have neither a scarcity nor abundance of good cooks. It's coming out fine, uninspired.
We have tended to have an abundance of artists and artisans, so
Abundance of gourmet chefs.
that'd be a very different game.
They have realized the value of having people that know how to do just general stuff like smithing and house repairs and plumbing.
Stained glass making.
On top of the magic. On top of the magic, yeah.
Are we ready for the next prompt?
Absolutely.
An infected outsider arrives seeking amnesty. They have some much needed resources with them. Choose one. Welcome them into the community, remove a scarcity, but also introduce an infection into the community. Or bar them from entry. What scarcity could they have addressed? How does its need become more dire this turn? And I think what happens is shortly after the arrival of the messenger from Zalo, a woman on the run arrives in town, bearing the torque of a gravekeeper. She identifies herself as Vasilia.
She's a long way from home.
Yep. Lex is pointing a finger at me. She makes a bold claim. She says that as a powerful wizard, she can warm the bridge and the people on it for as long as they will shelter her and keep her safe. The people of the bridge, naturally, agree. What they do not realize is that she was stabbed by a dead steel blade on her way north.
Oof.
And the way that it affects people with her unique physiology is it's not powerful enough to consume her. But being around her too long creates a miasma that spreads a lesser effect of the dead steel to other people. So it causes slow decay, slow rot, potentially bacterial infections, and makes people more susceptible to being taken by the undead if they happen to be in the presence of one. So the infection I will call dead steel miasma. And it starts to slowly creep its way through the community, mostly undetected, because people just think it's just winter. So people think they're just getting sick from being in winter and it being a harsh environment.
So the
What is-
hexologists don't realize this is going on. They don't catch it.
They haven't
They
had
don't
time
notice?
to do a full.
They're looking at mushrooms, dog. There's these really weird mushrooms.
That reminded me of a disease in real life. I'm trying to remember the name of leprosy.
So some of the symptoms are like it causes numbness in the extremities that gradually works its way up. It causes paleness, chills, and fever, and makes you more susceptible to like bacterial infections, makes wounds heal more slowly. But it also sort of makes you kind of already sort of a little bit undeadish, which means that if like there was a necromancer around, you would be able to be turned and taken just like a necromancer seizing a skeleton's remains. That's the worst part of it.
Good thing we don't have an abundance of necromancers. So
That we know of.
If I could throw another layer on this, all of those maladies that come along with the miasma, yeah, sure, they suck. They make it harder. What they also do is none of those symptoms rise to the level where it will prevent you from doing work. And what's more, there is a drive towards drudgery that pushes people to kind of tamp down the symptoms and continue doing menial tasks to eschew rest. Not necessarily to overexertion, but like, I mean, it's like, and this is part of why it just feels like winter. You never feel like you want to get out of bed, but you always know that you need to. You're always tired. You always have a runny nose. But day after day, you're still getting up and going to work.
Yeah. And maybe people don't notice the negative effects of winter quite as much because they're already sort of vaguely miserable anyway. And this isn't everyone on the bridge. This is just people that are working closely with Velekalum. But it probably spreads to a reasonable population of them. But what it does do is it removes the warm weather preparation scarcity. The bridge is, like, Velekalum is warming the bridge. Yes, Lex.
are we sure it's not Visalia?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Oh,
I remember Visalia. I
Visalia?
remember Visalia too, because of the other way, the way you're saying it just keeps making me think of Vaseline, and I would really like to not think about that.
That's actually my first thought. I was like, if it was Vasilia, I would have made a Vaseline joke, and I would have remembered the Vaseline joke.
So
That's
I'm
fair.
not
Yeah,
redoing that. I'm not re-recording the
Absolutely
entire
don't.
conversation.
That's
but
fine.
Okay, it's Salia. My bad. It's been a year and a half since we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't
that
remember
all?
the name.
Absolutely.
I had to look it
That's
up
a
and know.
clue, everyone.
Literally, all we need to do is have Bree go, by the way, it's Visalia, not Vasilia. Ben forgot. We all forgot. Carry on.
Yeah,
It
throw
is
that
what it
on
is.
in there.
If even.
Honestly, we can leave you guys dragging me in. That's fine. So, if you want to know who Visalia is in greater detail, you can go all the way back to the skeletons.
Episode 3.
Yeah.
We are bringing some people back. But anyway,
If you're
Visalia.
going to go all the way back to the skeletons, just go all the way back to Quest and start from the beginning.
Honestly,
And
though,
hey, if you're doing
that's-
that, maybe check out our Patreon while you're there.
Yeah.
We've got a $1 tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. We're also part of the One Shot Network.
Just go for everyone's lowest tier, and it'll only be like 10, 15 bucks.
That's true, though.
If you give everyone $1, it only costs
Then we
you a
all
lot of
get
dollars.
$1.
For the cost of a Netflix subscription 5 years ago, you can get the entry tier to like 5 One Shot Network shows.
For the cost of, I don't know, 2 sides of guacamole at Chipotle.
For the cost of a
delicious.
single Subway foot-long sub.
Let's
You
move
can
on.
subscribe to everyone.
I agree. We should move on. The lack of cold weather preparations is removed as Visalia warms the bridge just by being there. The whole thing is basically climate controlled now.
Thank you for listening to Game Woven, a collaborative storytelling collective building a world one game at a time. If you like what we're doing, please go give us a review on your favorite podcasting app and be sure to tell your friends about us. And you can also support us over on Patreon. Today we played Quiet Year by Avery Adler, featuring me, Brianna Jean, Emily Anderson, ttbenjamin, robbrolling, and Zadkiel.